Alright, today we're going to be learning to recognize functions by characteristics. Alright, so that means we are going to get to create our own equations and graph them, okay? So today is actually kind of fun. You get to be a little bit more creative. So let's start off with some vocabulary. I want you to know what an x-intercept and a y-intercept is. So let's start off with x-intercept. This is where the graph touches the x-axis. And then for y-intercept, it's where the graph touches the y-axis. Right, so x-intercept for x-axis, y-intercept for y-axis. And let's just see what that looks like. For example, let me draw a graph over here. Remember, this is your x-axis, the horizontal one, and this is your y-axis. Just trying to write. Okay, there we go. And let's say we have like 1, 2, 3, -1, -2. And let me just draw a line through those 2 points. This would be x-intercept of 3 because it's at 1, 2, 3. And this one would be a y-intercept of -2 because it's down here, -1, -2. So that's what this looks like. It's literally where your line touches the x-axis, where your line touches the y-axis. All right. So with that in mind, let's get on to drawing for numbers 1 and 2. So we're going to create an equation and sketch a graph for a function with each set of given characteristics. Use values that are any real numbers between -10 and +10. So here's where you get to choose some numbers, okay? If it were me, I would first take a look to see what type of function it is. So for number 1, we're creating an equation and sketching a graph that is a smooth curve, is continuous, has a minimum, and is quadratic. So I want to focus in on the part where it says it's quadratic. I want you to remember that quadratic equations are U-shaped, so they either look like this or they look like that. Okay? So those are the 2 options. They can be skinnier, they can be wider, they can be taller, shorter, whatever. But that's the very general shape, is they're curvy and they're U-shaped. Okay? So let's take a look. It's a smooth curve, okay? I mean, they are naturally smooth curves. It's continuous, great. So we're not going to draw our U made of dots because this would be discrete. Versus continuous is just the solid line. Has a minimum. Okay, which one of these has a minimum? Minimum's on the very bottom, okay? It's a low point. So that means we want to draw this type of graph. Okay, so when you want to draw this type of graph, well, let me show you the quadratic basic function. So remember in our definition of quadratics, we said it's like this. ax² plus bx plus c. Now, if you don't remember this, that's understandable. We just learned it, right? But what you can do is pull up your notes from last time, from the last lesson, and then that way you can remember the equations, okay? So ax² plus bx plus c and a, b, c are all real numbers. So what you can do here is if you want your graph to be pointing upwards, then a should be a positive number. Okay? If you want your graph pointing downwards, which we don't want, a should be negative. So here a is positive to have a u that's smiling, and a is negative if you want a u that's frowning. So we want a smiling graph. So we're going to pick a positive a. I'm going to pick a number. I want you to pick a different number, okay? You need to pick something between -10 and +10. So I'm going to pick a positive number. We said it's positive. And I'm going to pick, let's see, f of x is equal to 9.7. That's the number I pick. You pick something else. Do not pick 9.7. So that's my a value. And let me just highlight the a value. I just replaced the letter A with the number 9.7 because remember A, B, and C are real numbers. So I'm replacing A with a real number. Let's do the same thing for B. Let's replace B with a real number. So you can pick anything between -10 and 10. I choose -6. That's my B. So I just took this B value over here and I replaced it with a -6. And last but not least, we have to pick a C value. So you pick a different number than me, okay? You cannot pick the same number as me. But I'm going to pick +7, so +7 for me. Pick something else. Okay? So here we replaced our A, we replaced our B, and we replaced our C because those were all real numbers. And then you are choosing something else different from what I'm choosing. Alright, so now we have to graph this. Now how do we graph it? So I want you to go to this website. This is one of my favorite math websites there is, and one day we might even do an assignment on there. It's called desmos.com. Oops, that's not how you write. Okay, desmos.com. So you go to this website, desmos.com, and I'm also going to go to it in just a moment. So I'll let you guys type in desmos.com. Once you type it in, you should see this, desmos.com. You can still see the address on the very top, desmos.com, desmos.com. Once you do that, you can click right there in the middle, graphing calculator. This button, click it. And here's where we're going to type our equation, okay? So you can type the f of x. We don't have to though, so I'm not going to. All you have to do is type the right side of the equation. So what did I do? 9.7, oops, delete, 9.7 x. And then in order to do squared, you see the x and the y on the bottom. Next to the x and the y, there's an a squared. Click the a squared. And you can see a graph is already forming. It automatically updates as you type. So 9.7x squared, and I believe I said minus 6x, and then I said plus 7. So this is my graph. And I can barely see it, right? So let me zoom up a little bit. You can use your screen. You can press the plus or minus on the top right corner over here to zoom in, zoom out, whatever you like so that you can see it. Now, in order to copy this graph the best that I can, I want to locate my y-intercept. So all of us will have a y-intercept where it touches the y-axis. Notice that I do not have an x-intercept. It doesn't touch my horizontal line, but that's okay. I have a y-intercept at 0,7, and you can find that by just clicking on the dot. It's going to automatically give you a dot. You click on it. Okay, so I'm going to have a dot at 0,7, and then my graph is pretty skinny, and then what is this? It's about 0.3 and then about 6. So those are two spots that I can use to graph my equation. So I go back here, and they said at 7 I had a dot, and at 0.3, 6 I had another dot. So this is my graph, and I'll just draw it to the best of my ability. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just draw it as good as you can. Ta-da! That's my graph. So whatever your graph looks like, you copy it. Okay, yours is going to look different than mine because I told you to choose different numbers. Okay. Let's move on to number 2. We're going to create an equation and sketch a graph that, let's see, what type of function is this? I'm going to just highlight things to figure it out. Okay, it says it's a smooth curve, is increasing across the entire domain, is continuous, and is exponential. Okay, so exponential, generally they either look like this, flat and then increasing, or they can look like this, flat and then decreasing, or they can look like this, or this. Okay, so just to make it simpler, we're going to stick with the most basic form where it's flat and then increasing. So these have the form f of x is equal to a times b to the power of x plus c. And so remember, a, b, and c are all real numbers, and a is not equal to 0. I'm just going to write that in parentheses. Okay. Okay, so we're going to make sure it's a smooth curve. Okay, all exponential functions are smooth. We want to make sure it's increasing across the entire domain, so we have to pick this one or this one, but then I chose this one. This one's decreasing and this one's decreasing, so we can't choose those. Is continuous. Okay, so that means we're not going to draw it with dots. And is exponential, so this is the form we're going to be using. So let's just choose numbers. We can just choose whatever numbers we want. So for a times bx plus c, let me write an equation over here. F of x is equal to, I'm going to choose 3 as my a value, times my b value. I want it to be, okay, I want you to pick a positive a value, and I want you to pick a b value that's greater than 1. So pick a number bigger than 1 for b. So I'm going to pick 1.2. Then to the power of x, and then plus c. I'm just going to choose c is 0, because why not? Okay, so now that you have your equation, let's type it into Desmos. So go back to your Desmos, and let's get rid of this first equation, and let's type our next one. So minus 3 times 1.2, and how do I make it to the power of x? Remember, next to the x and y there's a squared. Well, next to the a squared there's a to the power of b. Press that one, and then that means you can type your exponent. So then you put your x there. And then, here's important. If you just type your c value at the end here, it's going to be part of your exponent. You don't want that. You need to press on the bottom right-hand corner on top of the delete button. There's this arrow, the right arrow. Underneath functions, there's left and right. You need to put the right arrows to get out of the exponent typing. And then now you can type your final bit. So this is what my graph looks like. And I can zoom out so I can see it a little bit better if I like. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it looks like. Let's take a look at what my y-intercept is. Oh, okay, it's 3. So then I'm going to go make sure I draw 3 into there. And where does it get flat at? It just gets flat against the x-axis in my case. So that's how I'm going to draw my graph, with a y-intercept of 3 and flattening out on the x-axis. Okay, y-intercept of 3 and flat on the left and increasing on the right. That's my graph. Yours will look different, don't worry about it, but this is what our graph looks like. So this is a harder section, so I'm gonna put you guys into groups and you guys can work together, and I'll be checking each group to make sure you guys don't have any questions, or if you do, I will make sure to answer them because I want you to ask, I want you to understand, okay? So good luck.